It's spoiler in time. And for me, spoiler in time means we'll finish by talking about episode 7, season 1 of Justified. But before that, I think it's fair to say we'll talk about episode 2, season 2 of Better Call Saul. But even before that, we're going to discuss episode 3 of season 1 of 11/22/63. Brian, do you see where I'm coming from?
Listen, I understand this is how you worship your shows in a particular order. I'm from a different faction.
Sure.
We normally talk about Better Call Saul first, then Justified, then 11/22/63. But I'm in your house, and I feel like I should respect what's important to you and obey your rules. Let us begin with the Hulu original 11/22/63.
What about the movie draft? Because I won.
No, well, you won, but we're never going to acknowledge that. We're never going to talk about it. You can write yourself a trophy, put it on your own cabinet. It don't matter. We're, of course, getting ready with the list of movies for the summer movie draft, which right now, for those of you guys interested, it looks like as soon as, 2 weeks from now, we may, maybe next week, we might have our thing. We're talking about putting 10 Cloverfield Lane as the beginning of the summer movie draft.
I'll bid 100.
Oh, yeah, that's the problem. I just want to give them all my money. I want to show up with imaginary coins and say, I ruined the movie draft for you, Dan.
By the way, Brian said we don't need to talk about the movie draft. It's too early, and then I just broke that rule.
That's fine. It's fine.
Because I won.
Yeah,
all right,
you did.
Let's start off with some triage here from Mark Creech regarding 11/22/63, episode 3. Which is the one we're going to be spoilerin, so spoilerin may begin now. He says, what do you think now? George has a location and sidekick, love story in place, problems disappointing new girlfriend, juggling time with her and his stakeout with his new friend Bill, now enchanted with Oswald's wife, fast-moving action instead of self-discussion and side issues. Mark wants to know, Brian, are we converts to the positive side now?
So, real quick, did you know how much of this is not in the book? There's a substantial amount.
I have no idea.
By this point.
I haven't read the book.
Okay, but I guess outside of having read the book, have you heard grumblings about not in the book? Okay, great. No, so this is all new.
Just from you.
This whole sidekick thing, not in the book at all.
Huh.
And it's all him. Now, keep in mind, I actually think this is a wonderful solution to bring something that is in the book to the television show. Because in the book, he's juggling, he's got his official life and his side life and so on. And of course, you're able to get internal dialogue. I think it's a really good situation to give him a sidekick.
Okay. So he can talk to Bill and say the things that you would just hear him thinking.
Correct. Because in the first 2 episodes, there was an awful lot of him saying like, oh man, I'm this character and this is my motivation. But what do I do about this question that I have that I'm saying out loud to myself? So I think it's a really good solution. I also like the fact that they're introducing a drama that has lower stakes. Will he, won't he with the girl. And the longer it goes, like we go through over a year of time. He's all the way up to 1962, right?
I thought it might have been 2 years, but maybe you're right. Maybe
it's you know what? Maybe it is
quite
2
a
years.
bit of time.
Yeah, no. It's been quite a while, and he's clearly established in this life, and we're farther away from the idea. I do find it fascinating that they set up the rabbit hole with the stated important moment that plus every time you go in, it resets. And, that's sort of Chekhov's gun sitting in the middle of the room, And it's like, well, why would they tell us that? Because he's clearly committed to making it go through.
Yeah, and this risks a reaction from you. But as soon as that girl dies at the high school, he's going to be headed back to Maine to reset that, isn't he? Don't even say anything.
No.
If that were to happen,
I'm not saying anything.
Maybe even Bill dies. He's not even in the book. That is the kind of thing that lingering in the back is I've been thinking about. It's like, okay, something disastrous is going to happen because time is always pushing back, and then he's going to want to go reset and have to go through all of this again. And there could be even a little Groundhog Day element there. But I have to say, I really like this episode a lot better than episode 2 because we're back on track and we got to meet Jack Ruby and Lee Harvey Oswald, for God's sake. That's why I'm here, is the JFK assassination story.
Yeah. What's interesting is I, even when I read the book, was not here for the JFK assassination story. I was here for the time travel story. So as a result,
to me, that's one and the same. But go ahead.
Yeah. Well, like to me, whether you're talking about JFK, whether you're betting on horses, whether you're resetting from a rabbit hole, all of those fall under I'm getting the time travel story, so I'm getting what I want. I do think it's interesting that to you, it's back on track. I guess I like it, question mark. I like the changes they're making. I think it's interesting. Of everything, the thing I like the most is that it's clear they're willing to make changes. And at this point, per your question, I don't know. It's clear that they don't mind going off script. It's clear that they don't mind going in new directions.
Right.
And there's a part of me that really delights in the not knowingness of all of that.
Yeah. And the reason I'm so excited to see these historical figures, first of all, it's called 11/22/63. And we had an entire episode where there was just nothing relating to the main premise.
But exposition? No. Yeah, but
no, the
side
second
quests.
episode was like, what does this have to do with anything? And I'm sure it'll tie in later. I'm going to give him that. This was like, okay, we're back. And yes, I should have a surprise appearance by Jack Ruby. That's awesome. That's what time travel is for me, is like walking down the street and running into somebody's like, holy crap, you're Jack Ruby. But before you're Jack Ruby, that's amazing. Lee Harvey Oswald, obviously a pinnacle to that. But also part of the time travel fun for me is the period piece aspect of it. And we got some of that again in this episode as well.
I really adored, and again, this was all new to me because it wasn't in the book, but I adored that moment that his new sidekick pulls out a picture of his sister and says, can you save her? And there's that awkward, like, doesn't work that way. We're not gods. I'm just... there's a conduit. It only takes me back to 1960.
Well, and I wondered if it would have been more compelling if she died while he was driving from Dallas to Kentucky, right? And so it was like, well,
although you did get a taste of that when his new girlfriend was saying that she was in Maine during that time, and there's that weird moment where he goes, just missed each other,
Mm-hmm.
And by the way,
that's definitely planting a seed for that Chekhov's gun.
Yeah, that's Chekhov's missed casual encounters.
That's Chekhov's bullet to put in the gun later.
Yeah,
Chekhov had a whole freaking arsenal.
I gotta tell you, now that there are elements of the story that are more emotional, that are smaller, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean that it's a smaller emotional world. It doesn't feel like such a cheap production as it did the first couple episodes for me.
Oh, we didn't have a single flashback to our instigator,
to our exposition master,
yeah.
our dungeon master.
Let me tell you how this works still. So yeah, no, I definitely would call this my favorite of the three so far. And setting up some questions that I actually care to find out the answers to in episode 4.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel. I don't know that I would put it in first place, but also I don't know that I loved the first 2 episodes either. So I'll say sure. Let's call it the best of the bunch. It's finally on track, is what I would say.
Yeah, that's fair. Let's get to Jimmy McGill, Better Call Saul, episode 2
so
of season
good.
2.
Good. Spoiler alert, it's so good.
He's in place, right? He's taken the job, and then so obviously we have to go to his brother, who really doesn't want him to succeed, and see what he reacts to when he finds out that Jimmy's doing better than ever. And we get Mike. We get so much Mike.
Well, and plus also we get the fusion, because when last episode, what we saw was 2 completely independent stories. We saw Saul Goodman having a crisis of confidence, going back to his scammer ways. Separately, we saw Mike, dealing with the fact that somebody wasn't sticking to the deal. He was unprofessional, and that there was trouble brewing over there. This is the episode we see the 2 of them come together at the end, but it's a fascinating independent journey all the way up to that moment. And when it does happen, of course, it happens in a very, very satisfying way. I gotta tell you, the moment of this entire episode that resonated the most with me, and maybe it's for those of you independent guys, maybe you don't know what this is like, but Jimmy McGill having, decided to go for it, trying to go legit, doing his thing. His brother walks in, just as he puts it, to bear witness. In other words, to look into the eye of Jimmy as he fails yet again. And he starts to crumble and choke on his words. And then you see his new girlfriend's hand go on his leg, and as a husband who has derived so much emotional support and strength from his wife, that was amazing, and it makes it all the more painful because we know this does not end up being a happily ever after story, right?
Well, and what a well-told vignette, right? Because when we know that he's coming, which, by the way, there's a little plot inconsistency where they make everybody take their phones away. And that was a great way to be like, oh, we know who that is. Jimmy knows who that is. And then they all get their phones back when he's still standing outside. I was like, well, if you hadn't, anyway, if you look past
and to be honest, like, I don't even mind that, because to me, all that does is shine a spotlight on the fact that this is a fake condition that Michael McKean is rolling in.
But that vignette is so beautiful because there's not a word exchanged about the elephant in the room, right? It's just him sitting down, and it's a look, it's a stammer, it's a touch. And it told pages of story right there.
Well, and plus also, here's the great part, because I think the journey of when we meet Saul Goodman in Breaking Bad, he is a cartoon. He is a parody. He is a morally bankrupt shell of what used to be a lawyer that has been made into a caricature. We are beginning the very understandable transformation into that character. As we watch the anger of Jimmy McGill, as we see him get the phone call from Mike saying, are you still morally flexible? As we see him like, well, you've been handed this problem. How do you solve it? And he comes up with a very unconventional, very entertaining solution. And then there's just one little thing. Well, naturally, you got to have a VHS tape in order to back your story up. Of course, yeah, no, make the tape. Have him sit in a pie, have him cry. It's hilarious. But then we have the stark moral contrast of his girlfriend saying, you fabricated evidence. That's like a thing. But yet none of us, the audience, feel that. We're just sort of like, well, yeah, I mean, yeah, we did. But I mean, it's like we had to because we were representing our client or whatever. I love that they're doing that. And I only think it's going to get better and better as we go farther and farther down the rabbit hole.
No, I was going to say the same thing. Like the whole time when he's doing the favor for Mike, right? I'm like, oh man, this is not good. He shouldn't be doing this. Where's it going to go wrong? And you're watching and you're like, well, it's not going wrong. He's actually totally nailing it. It's not going to conflict. This isn't going to come back to hurt him. Like, what's the big deal? He even got some pies and an entertaining story to tell Kim. And I, as a viewer, like you said, was totally with Jimmy the whole way. Like, yeah, no, this is genius. Well done. He knows what these cops are up to. He's lending his experience to help this guy out of a hard position. It's brilliant. You got this funny story at the end. And when Kim says you falsified evidence, I was ready to argue with her. I was like, no, I didn't. Like, I just made a tape, It's not a case. It's not really like evidence. The cops might not have even ever asked for it. Like, it's just incident. Like, I was ready to make all the excuses that Jimmy was making. And it's such a brilliant scene because she's like, no, you falsified evidence and I can't know about this. And I'm like, oh gosh, maybe she's right. I guess it is I guess if they did find out that he did and I had the come down that Jimmy had, it was great.
Well, and speaking of which, I believe if you're going to point to one moment where Saul Goodman was born, I think this is it. I think you can make a case that everything up until then has been Jimmy McGill trying to reconcile things. Jimmy McGill trying to learn law, trying to go legit, trying to get away from his stuff. This is the one moment where you watch him make a conscious decision, not in a big way, but in a small way, saying, I'm going to sequester. Like, I don't think I did anything wrong. I think I represented my client, and that was fine. But I understand you're saying that you legally and emotionally don't ever want to hear this again. And so he just nods and says, eats this pie and says, yeah, you'll never hear it again. To me, that is the first conscious decision that makes Saul Goodman.
You're absolutely right. I hadn't even thought about that. But up until now, it's been, is it James McGill or Slippin' Jimmy? And Slippin' Jimmy isn't Saul Goodman. Slippin' Jimmy's a con man. The guy we saw at the hotel with Kim, that's Slippin' Jimmy.
Sure.
Right? Saul Goodman doesn't pull cons. Saul Goodman follows the law. James McGill helping Mike was like, I'm following the law. Am I falsifying evidence? Potato. Right? Kim's like, no, you're falsifying evidence. There's no alternate pronunciation. And that's the difference between Saul Goodman and other lawyers. That's the difference between Saul Goodman and Slippin' Jimmy is like, he actually thinks he has an internally consistent morality. just flexible.
It's that moment that he consciously accepts the sin of Saul Goodman into his heart, and of course, we've already seen the retribution. We've seen where this end up. In the black and white vignettes at the beginning of each season. Love what they're doing, and it's like that scene ended, and I turned to Bonnie. I was just like, so good. This show is so unbelievably good.
Well, it's such a well-described character because it's not just a con man who's a lawyer. I mean, you now know that Jimmy McGill thinks that Saul Goodman is different than Slippin' Jimmy. Is better than Slippin' Jimmy. Is an improvement. And I'm sure we're going to be told the story of why he thinks Saul Goodman is better than James McGill, attorney at law.
Saul Goodman is definitely an armored version of Slippin' Jimmy. Slippin' Jimmy is a cockroach. He runs when the lights turn on.
Slippin' Jimmy doesn't have any borders. Saul Goodman has borders. There are things we saw in Breaking Bad Saul Goodman will not touch. Slippin' Jimmy kind of just went wherever.
Yeah, no, Saul Goodman has this outside strong shell that allows him the comfort of believing he's morally right on the inside.
Yeah. Or at least justified.
Brings us to our next show. Played. Well played, sir.
Yes, let's talk about episode 7 of season 1 of Justified, where at first we think somebody's after Ava, but it turns out they're not after Ava. They're after Raylan, and he has to find out who it was. And then the guy who is the mentor for astral projectors and the magicians shows up and turns out to be Boyd's dad.
Can I tell you, this was the best episode we've seen so far and away. I am finally getting a taste of the big meta story about it. It was genuinely a surprise. I got suckered in to the first 30 minutes being all about like, why are they trying to kill Ava? And they're like, oh wait, they're not. And plus we got a touch of that last episode when the guy researching is like, yeah, man, I'm after you. What's up with all these shootings? For the first time, you feel him morally bound to where his one superpower, the guy who could draw first, is no good. And you are seeing the tie-in with Boyd's family. And I thought it was a good surprise that the cop was a bad guy and all of that stuff.
I didn't see it coming.
Right. But I tell you,
I started to suspect towards the revelation, but it was very close to the revelation.
I loved how practical they handled it as well. Once it became clear that he was the one, obviously he shot the hitman and so on. But then the phone rings and he's like, all right, Raylan's no dummy. He's like, hey man, so anyway, I'm the killer. Let's talk, bro. I gotta tell you, I think this is the episode that got its hooks into me. I think that I'm down for the adventure. Plus, for the first time, I have a truly morally ambiguous position with Boyd because Boyd has been a bad guy and he's been a cartoon reformed bad guy, like a guy who's clearly faking and I don't believe a word out of his sanctimonious mouth. But now we see him in jail. We see people turning on Boyd and then his dad shows up and so on. And all of a sudden I'm looking at the chessboard and I think, might be worth it for Boyd to actually go legit and really genuinely try to join up with Raylan at this point.
Yeah, you nailed it when my big reaction to this was like, oh, this is the story arc of Justified.
Yes.
This is that now we are planting. I mean, we've planted seeds before, but now they're starting to show little bean sprout leaves, right? Like this is where it's going. And the wife having interactions with Ava and knowing Ava is hiding something and covering something up, like that's for a future day. That wasn't for this episode. That's for what's going on. And seeing Raylan, who was kind of like, well, you could argue whether he should have shot the people or not, but he was right to do it because they were bad guys. Now it's like, well, he really shouldn't be with Ava. And Art finding out that he's with Ava is very clearly
dude,
like,
and plus
I told
also,
you to do one thing and you didn't do it.
Like the beginning of The Shield began with this very cartoon black or white, like this guy's definitely the devil. He shot a whatever in the pilot. This one, it took me, I liked the slippery descent where it's like, okay, this guy is clearly the White Knight in shining armor, whose superpowers to shoot people first, blah, 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 blah. But now, after watching him make minor screw-ups over and over and over again, now we're watching his boss chew him out with genuine rage. That was some fantastic acting as he's like, I asked you to do one thing. Don't screw the witness and quit shooting people. And it's like, and I'm like, yeah, Raylan, you done messed up. It's like,
but Art has a hard time getting his male characters to do things because he's also Principal Deke in 11/22/63.
Good point. But I gotta tell you, man, it's been a slow seduction. But I think at this point, I'm fully invested.
Yeah, and the one thing that I've been enjoying about this was the patter and the talk, and that would only last so long. At a certain point, I'd be like, I've enjoyed the dry Raylan way of doing things, but there's only so much of that you can watch. So it's good to see already a little bit of an intriguing, like, it's not just Boyd and Raylan having a difference of opinion that goes back to Boyhood. We're seeing the edges of a much more complex scenario, and that's good.
Well, and we're getting a taste of a flawed hero at this point. Early on, he was a flawless hero. It was society that didn't understand.
Not an entirely flawed evil guy.
Yeah, correct. Absolutely. At any rate, for all you people who are shouting, we need to give it a chance at this point, I'm giving you a provisional pass. I'm emotionally invested in it, and that is every time I watch an episode, I kid you not, Tom, I'm like, if only we could do 2 or 3 a week. I mean, I could just keep going.
I'm only going to do 1 a week.
I can't leave you behind, sir.
The reason I do that is so we're like guaranteed, because I'm a planner, Brian.
I know you are.
And I just want to make sure that we always got one in the chamber every week. But I will also say that after watching this episode this week, my somewhat veiled rage at having to watch another procedural cop,
another cowboy,
etc. I know it's different, but it really is the same big tent of the type of drama. I was like, damn you people, this is really good.
Yeah, congratulations, jerk. You won, all of you.
So that's it for Spoilerin Time. Thanks for joining us, folks. Hope you enjoyed it. We will spoil you again next week.
Bye.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.